Hey everyone, my name is Steve Abrams. I'm a backend engineer on the package team at GitLab. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about project versus group versus instance level endpoints with regards to the package registry. And that's kind of a mouthful. So this is a topic that comes up a lot when we're implementing new package registries, and it pretty much involves how do we scope users' views when they're downloading packages. And that might all sound a little bit confusing, so hopefully this will clear it up, and it will also clear up when you're looking in some of the documentation why there are different options for project versus group versus instance. So let's go ahead and take a look at the docs here. And so we have, right now, we have Conan, Maven, and NPM are our three package registries that are available, or three repositories that are available on the GitLab registry. And so let's take a look at Maven, because I think it's sort of the one that currently has the most options. And so if you've worked with the Maven package registry, you've seen that we have project, group, and instance level endpoints. And so what does that mean? So when you configure your pom.xml to set your remote repository, the remote itself actually includes your project ID. And so this makes sense. When you publish a project, or when you publish a package, it belongs to a project on GitLab. So like from the technical standpoint, that means there's a table in the database that is for the projects, and there's a table for packages, and the package table has a project ID in it. So it's directly associated with the project. And that's what we want. When you push up a package, you want to be able to associate it with a given project. However, things get a little bit different when you're installing packages. When you're installing packages, you're not referring to the project ID or anything in particular. You're just referring to the package name. And so how is GitLab going to figure out which package in particular you're talking about and whether or not you have access to it? And so the permissions on GitLab all revolve around project. And that's why we kind of place the package within a project. So if you have permissions to a project, then you have permissions to the packages that belong to that project. So I'm going to go ahead and try to draw a little bit of what I'm talking about here. We'll see how well this works out. So I'm going to start out, and I'm going to draw what I'm going to call the instance. And so this square, I'll add a label here, is, and we'll bump the size. So this is the instance, and this would be GitLab.com or your self-managed instance of GitLab. Cool. And so inside of this instance, we have groups. So if you work on GitLab.com, you probably belong to some groups where all of your projects live. And so let's go ahead and use maybe the shape here to represent a few different groups. And we'll just create a few of them. And within groups, there might even be subgroups. So this group might contain other groups. And that can kind of descend as far as you really want, just to kind of demonstrate what that looks like. And then within the groups, we have some projects. So I'll use the circles for projects. And I'll add a few here. Whoop. I'll copy that one. And maybe there's one in this subgroup way over here. Cool. So we've got our instance, we've got our groups, and we've got our projects. I'll just add some labels so everyone doesn't lose track. And call that the project. Okay. And so a project, of course, is where the packages live, which I kind of previously described. So I'll add maybe some icons here for package. If they have one, we'll find out. Perfect. So let's add a few of those, make it a little bit bigger. And so all of these different projects may or may not have packages. It just depends. And when you're dealing with them, when you're uploading them to a project which you have permissions to upload them to. So when we talk about downloading them, however, there's three sort of options. So we have the instance view, the group view, and the project view. And that's sort of just the scope at which you can see all of these packages. So let's say that you have a project view. So that means that you are having a remote, and we can look at this directly from Maven. So if we go to the Maven project level endpoint, so we can see that for the downloadable repository endpoint here, this is the remote that is used. So when Maven makes API calls or requests to GitLab to get these packages, it's sort of prefixing all of its requests with this. And you'll notice that it includes the project ID. So I'll just add that to this chart here. Oh, doesn't work quite how I expected it. Just add some text. There we go. That's a bit better. And so when we have something like this, this is the project level. All right, so we'll add a little arrow there. And that means that you enter your project ID, which is this project's ID, and when it is going to, when you go to install packages using Maven, it's only searching within the scope of this one project. So there's no way to even know about the packages in this project. There's no way to know about the packages in this group, or in other places within GitLab. So, well, what if, as an organization, you have a group and you want to be able to distribute all of your packages and make them available to users? So in that case, you might come and use the Maven group level endpoint. And you can see here, so the upload, the distribution section is the same. It still distributes the package to a single project, but for downloads, it's now using a group ID. So I'll just add one of those here. And so this is kind of pointing towards the entire group. And so if you use this endpoint, when you're installing packages of a given name, you can see these three packages. So you have access to them, but you can't see packages within another group. So the benefit of doing something like this is if you're using a very generic name for your package, maybe it's just a statistics package, and you just named it statistics. You know that there's only one package named statistics within your project. So when you connect to that remote, there's no chance that you're going to have any trouble finding that package and being able to install it and use it. And similar with a group, it's likely that you control everything within your group, or someone does at your organization. And if you have any naming conflicts, they'll be managed at some level by someone. So this might be the statistics package, and it doesn't mess with anyone else's statistics package. And then the real benefit here is if you're working on an instance like GitLab.com, there might be many people that want a package named statistics. Like this might be a completely different organization, and they have a statistics package. It wouldn't be very fair for them to not be able to name it statistics just because you have yours named statistics. So within their group, if they use their group level endpoint, they'll be able to download and use that package as well. So the last step is looking at the instance. And so the instance level, you can see, has no reference to a group or a project. It is just GitLab.com, or it would be your self-managed domain. So this is a way to access all of the packages in a given instance. So if you are connected to this remote, you have visibility into every package on a given instance. So if you're on GitLab.com, technically you could search the entirety of GitLab.com for your packages. Now, do remember that a package belongs to a project. So if I create a package and put it into a private project, certainly that's not going to be publicly available to anyone that hooks up to GitLab.com and tries to search for packages. But if I'm making an open source project with an open source package, this is a way for me to share it and for people to connect and get to it. Or if you're running your own self-managed instance, this is how you might manage all of your packages, because it's your instance, you know everything that's in there, so you're able to share them with everyone. And so as you can see, Maven has it pretty nicely set up. You have the option to connect using any of those three options in order to download your packages. So let's talk a little bit about the sort of issue that occurs with instance level. And this is kind of specific to GitLab.com. So as mentioned before, within a given scope, you can kind of like handle your own naming convention. But if you're searching GitLab.com for a package named statistics, how does it know which one to use? So when you're using an instance level endpoint, you have to be using packages that are named in a way that is completely unique. And so this is where you see we have some naming restrictions on the instance level. So if you have a project that lives at the path GitLab org/GitLab, then you have to name it GitLab org/GitLab. You can't name it foobar. And that makes sense because if I named my package foobar and someone else wanted to name their package foobar, then that would create a conflict at the instance level. And we want to avoid that. We're working on ways to find solutions that'll, loosen this restriction, because it is a pain point for many people. And so hopefully we'll find some solutions in the future that will make everyone happy, especially because these restrictions also still occur on a self-managed instance where they might not necessarily apply to the same extent. So hopefully this kind of gives you an idea of how these different endpoints, project level, group level, and instance level, give you different views into what packages you can access. Let's take a look at how the other available package types kind of play into this. And so you may have run into in the development documentation a chart sort of showing the availability of, Maven has project, group, and instance level, Conan only has instance level, and NPM only has group level, which we'll kind of get into what all that means. So let's take a look at Conan next. So for Conan, we only have instance level. It's just the initial implementation. We plan on adding group and project level, but it should look very familiar. When you add the Conan remote, it is the entirety of the instance. So it's GitLab.com. There's no reference to a group or a package. So what that means is that, a group or a project, sorry. So what that means is that when you connect, there has to be some way to identify what project the package is pulling from, so that GitLab can decide whether your user has permissions to pull that project or pull that package. And so when you connect to Conan, you're using some sort of authentication, be it a personal access token or a CI token or any of the available tokens on GitLab. And so those are associated with your user, and then we need a way to identify the project so that we can say, does your user have permission to access this project and its packages? So in Conan, we have a naming restriction similar to Maven, where a portion of the package name, the username of the Conan recipe, as they call it, must be the plus sign separated project path. So since Conan already restricts you to only having 2 slashes, we can't just add the path of GitLab org/GitLab CE. We have to remove that slash. So for the username, it's GitLab org plus GitLab CE. And then once someone requests this package, we can find that this package belongs to this project. Your user has permissions to access this project, and you're allowed to download the package. So in the future, we'll be adding additional remotes that will allow you to specify the group and project level, very similar to what you can do on Maven. And that way you can have more freedom in how you name your packages and access them. And last, let's take a look at NPM, because it's sort of currently in a special state. So if we look at NPM, the authentication section with the npm-rc file is where we'll see the registry and remotes that we're connecting to. And you can see that here we have the uploading portion. So we upload it based on project ID. And that is also mirrored when you look at the uploading packages section. You add a configuration to your package.json file, and that includes a project ID. So that's saying that when you publish this package, you're publishing it to this remote endpoint that includes your project ID, so it will be added to that project. However, when you download packages from the NPM repository on GitLab, you can see here that you're only connecting to specifically to GitLab. There's no project ID or group ID for these projects. So it's technically an instance level endpoint, but we've added a little logic to NPM that kind of mixes up this whole mindset that I've been kind of showing you, where NPM projects, or sorry, NPM packages have to have a scoped name. And what that means, if you're familiar with NPM, is that you have a scope, which is the @ scope, and then / your package name. And so for GitLab, if we go to the naming convention, which there's a section here, what that means is that if you have a group or namespace, you need to use the top level namespace or group as your scope. So you can see here GitLab org/GitLab. GitLab org is the scope. From there, you can name the package anything. So you can see here we have an example of GitLab org being the scope. Actually, that's a bad example. So that shows that you can't use foo as the scope. But here, so we have a top level namespace of foo, a group name of bar, and then the project is named buzz. So you can see the scope has to be foo, but the package name itself can be anything. So what this means is that when you download a package from GitLab, first we find the group, check your permissions, and then we find the specific package within the group or its descending subgroups. So even though we're connecting at the instance level based on that remote, because of these naming restrictions, it's kind of acting like a group level endpoint. And so this is something that we also plan on expanding our future functionality for, to add the additional endpoints to identify group ID and project ID so that you have a little bit more freedom here with your naming and with how you handle your installs and downloads. Hopefully this kind of helps with your understanding of what we mean when we talk about project, group, and instance level, and it clears up a little bit of the understanding of why there are so many options for Maven and why we are pushing to add those options for the other package managers. As always, appreciate any feedback that you can leave, and thanks for watching.